back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, December 10th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap last night's game between the Bengals and the Cowboys. Bengals winning that game 27-20. So we'll talk about that. We'll also get into talking about the college football games from over the weekend. We'll talk about how the conference championship matchups went, and we'll also take a look at the bracket as well. Then we'll get into discussing some of the other games from the Week 14 slate. We'll talk about the Steelers-Browns game, Steelers improving to 10-3 on the season. We'll talk about the Eagles-Panthers game, how that came down to the very end. Panthers were very competitive in that game, could have won that. We'll talk about it. And then we'll also talk about the 49ers getting back on track, winning big over the Bears in their post-Matt Eberflus era. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Cowboys and the Bengals, how that game unfolded last night. So I did change my pick to the Bengals. The Bengals really, for both teams, though, it's been very disappointing, their seasons, respectively. And odds are they're both not making the playoffs. It would take a miracle. But the Bengals were able to get the win finally. They snapped their 3-game losing streak, and they're 5-8, and they're still mathematically in it. They need a lot of help, though. They got to win out and get a ton of help, which I don't think is going to happen. But at least for them, they ended up getting the win. And Joe Burrow played really well last night, as did Jamar Chase. At one point, when Joe Burrow threw a pick in the third quarter, I thought that was the turning point. And then when the Bengals got their punt blocked, I thought that was the turning point. But the Cowboys, couldn't take advantage. Well, they did take advantage of the interception. They ended up kicking a field goal. But at the very end of the game, so the Bengals are punting, Cowboys are going to get the ball back, and I don't think I've ever seen this before, where a punt gets blocked and the receiving team ends up fumbling the ball, and that leads to, well, not really that they fumbled it, they just mishandled the ball, and the kicking team ends up recovering it. Because that's what happened towards the end of the game. That's really the main thing I wanted to talk about, is what happened towards the end of the game. Bengals punt ends up getting blocked, and the Cowboys mishandle it. Bengals recover, and they retain possession. And, of course, what ends up happening is Joe Burrow connects with Jamar Chase for a 40-yard touchdown, and the Bengals end up getting a stop. They get the Cowboys to turn it over on downs, and they end up winning the game. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. Because I thought the minute the punt gets blocked, I thought that was it for the Bengals. But that ended up not happening. They ended up getting a little bit of luck on their side, retained possession, and Jamar Chase was spectacular last night. 14 receptions on 18 targets. He had 177 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown also had a good game. He had 58 yards on the ground. He had 65 yards receiving and a touchdown. Was tiptoeing down the sideline and scored a touchdown. They didn't rule the touchdown initially, but they went back and reviewed it, and he didn't step out of bounds. So the Bengals got a touchdown out of that. And then you also had... they did kick a decent amount of field goals last night. Well, no, they kicked 2. They went 2 for 2 on field goals. The other touchdown, well, Jamar Chase, he had 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown had 1. And then you had the 2 field goals. So, and Joe Burrow, once again, 369 yards passing, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He has 33 touchdowns to 6 picks on the season. And if the Bengals' record was better, it would be between him and Josh Allen right now for MVP, along with Saquon and Lamar Jackson. But because Joe Burrow doesn't have the record like the other teams do, because the teams with the players I just mentioned, they're probably going to the playoffs, and Joe Burrow is probably not. So that's why he's really not going to be, up for the MVP award, which is disappointing because he is having a really good year, but just it doesn't seem to matter because of the record. But you point to the Bengals defense. That's really been the main culprit in this. Now, he did have a pick. Now, he did throw an interception late, and you thought that was going to cost the Bengals, but it ended up not being the case. Luck kind of went in their favor, and they got the win. And, let's see how they finish the season. You got the Titans, the Broncos, and the Bengals at home, and then you're at the Steelers. So, you got to win out and hope that you get some help and maybe you sneak in. But they got an uphill battle. And then as for the Cowboys, Cooper Rush went 16 of 31 for 183 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Rico Dowdle, second straight week with over 100 yards. Now, you could say, well, he went against the Giants defense, and he also went against the Bengals defense. But give him credit, 18 carries for 131 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 6 receptions for 93 yards and a touchdown. Cowboys defense, 2 sacks on the day. They also lost DeMarvion Overshown in this game. He ended up leaving with an injury. And he's actually been playing really well. He had the pick 6 last week against the Giants. So, that's unfortunate there. Micah Parsons was upset about that. Yeah, he suffered a knee injury, and it's not looking good. Not looking good for him. And actually, as of a half hour ago on NFL.com, he is going to undergo season-ending surgery. So that's just unfortunate to hear. Because like I said, he was playing well. The Cowboys' defense actually has been playing better. Since they started getting some guys back, it's been getting better. And losing Overshown now, that just, again, it's unfortunate. So, and like I said, Micah Parsons was upset. Also, speaking of Micah Parsons, after the loss, he immediately, walked off the field into the locker room. I mean, he was visibly upset with how the Cowboys handled that block punt. How they mishandled it. And it's just been a lost year for them. Between injuries and just guys underperforming. That's what's kind of led them to 5-8. And they were feeling confident with the previous 2 games because they beat the Commanders in Washington, you beat the Giants, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, we're still mathematically in this thing. But their season is pretty much over. Both these teams, their seasons are pretty much over. But, had the Bengals had, an average defense this year, they would be in a much better position right now. Because look at what they're doing on offense. I mean, Chase Brown, he looks like he's going to be a good player. And he's somebody that I traded in both of my dynasty leagues. I had him, and I traded him. And, this is before he really started to produce. And now he's producing, and now I regret letting him go. But it happens. So they got a nice player with him. And, Jamar Chase, he's going to make a lot of money when the Bengals, finally give him that contract. Because they are going to give him that contract. Now, there was also a report out there that the Patriots are supposedly going to be all in on T. Higgins. And you know what? That would be great if the Patriots were able to get him. Because Drake May looks like he's the real deal. And the Patriots are kind of limited at what they have offensively. So bringing in a guy like T. Higgins, that really would help out your young quarterback. Surround him with a lot of talent. Because Drake May looks like he's the guy, the way he's been playing. So that was just something else that I wanted to bring up. But overall, an interesting game last night. Just to see Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do their thing, it's something special. It's just unfortunate that, they might not make the playoffs. But, hey, they're just going to have to come back next year and try again. Also, the other thing, too, is I saw some clips of it on social media, but there was the Simpsons cast. I saw a little bit of that. I didn't really tune in for it, but, you had Homer Simpson playing quarterback and against Bart, and on that you had Bart Simpson connecting with Lisa Simpson for the touchdown. That was the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow touchdown. So, I give the NFL credit because last year you also had, because my friends were talking about this, the Toy Story broadcast, and that was the game. That was one of the international games with the Jaguars and the Falcons. So, they're trying different things. And then you also have, the Nickelodeon broadcast as well. They're trying to appeal to, younger audiences to, get more viewership. So you got to give them credit for that. But, yeah, I'm just trying to watch the game. So, I was going to tune in for it, but I didn't. So, but it was a good night for me in one of my fantasy leagues because in my redraft league, my main league, my team dropped over 200 points. I had 168 going into last night, and then Jamar Chase had a big game. So he put me over 200. And right now I am in a playoff spot, but I need to win to cement it. I'm the second highest scorer, but I would feel much better if I'm able to get a win. I could either win or I lose and the other two teams that I'm tied with lose, and I still finish with more points than them. Because right now I'm the second highest scorer because of the amount of points I had in that league. And I had the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 for this week, and that is Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. So I am going to need them to come up big, this upcoming week if I'm going to want to make the playoffs. And Puka Nacua had a big game on Sunday against the Rams. Definitely makes me feel a little bit better that I took him instead of Saquon in that league. Because I think had he would have stayed healthy, he probably would have been a top 10, top 15 receiver the way he's playing right now. So, but yeah, so the Bengals get the win 27-20. Let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Both teams are now 5-8 on the season. Do you think the Bengals still have a chance of making the playoffs? I still don't. Win out and see what happens. But you do have the Broncos coming up on the schedule, so if you could beat them, that at least gives them another loss. But it's going to be really tough. It is going to be really tough for the Bengals to make the playoffs. But who knows? Crazier things have happened. So we are going to take our first break of the show. Then when we come back, we'll actually talk about some college football. We'll take a look at the conference championship games, what happened in those games, and then we'll take a look at the bracket as well. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about some college football. We'll take a look at the conference championship games, how the big ones unfolded. We'll take a look at the college football playoff bracket. So, yeah, a little different of a segment because, primarily, I focus on the NFL. But I am really looking forward to this new playoff for college football. Now, we'll see if there are some mismatches, if we'll see if there's some blowouts, because there were some blowouts in the conference championship games. But, I'm really looking forward to see how it all plays out. And, starting on Friday, you had the Mountain West championship game, and that was between UNLV and Boise State. And I did have that game on. Boise State's defense, dominated this game, and Aston Genty had a big day, of course. 32 carries for 209 yards and a touchdown. And he currently has on the season 2,497 rushing yards and 29 touchdowns on 344 carries. He's been unbelievable. And whoever ends up with him in the draft, you're getting a good player. You also have to have a good offensive line, too. If you have a terrible offensive line, then, it might not be good. But, maybe he's able to work through that. But we'll see. But it's unbelievable what he's been able to do. And, again, had another big game. And, yeah, Boise State wins 21-7 over UNLV. That's their second win against them this year because they beat them early on in the season. They won 29-24. So they did also play Oregon early on in the season. They lost that game 37-34. And how did Genty do in that game? Had 3 touchdowns. So he had almost 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. And I know we were discussing them in our production meeting yesterday. And, it's going to be interesting to see how Boise State matches up against some of these better teams. Because, if they shut down Genty, is their offense going to be able to overcome that? And how is their defense going to look against some of these better teams, these better competition? So, you had that conference championship game. And then to start off Saturday, you had Iowa State against Arizona State. And this game was a little bit of back and forth in the beginning. There were no punts through the first, the first quarter. First 5 possessions, really. The Sun Devils, they kicked the field goal to start the game. Then Iowa State answered with a touchdown to put them up 7-3. Then the Sun Devils answered with another touchdown. They answered with a touchdown of their own to make it 10-7. Then Iowa State answered with a field goal to make it 10-10. Then it was 17-10. Sun Devils scored a touchdown. Then Iowa State missed a field goal. Then there were a couple punts. And then they scored a touchdown at Arizona State before the end of the first half. And that made it 24-10. And then they kind of just never looked back. The Cyclones, to open up the second half, they had a fumble, which led to a touchdown. An interception that led to a touchdown. Another fumble, which led to another touchdown. So that made it 45-10. And it's just, game got out of hand. So the Arizona State Sun Devils, they move on. They win the Big 12 championship. So they are officially in the college football playoff. Then you had Georgia and Texas. And, Georgia beat Texas early on this season. The final score of that game, that was 30-15, I believe. And that was back in, if I can find it. Oh, yeah, that was back on October 19th. Yeah, they lost 30-15. Carson Beck actually got hurt in this game. He took a big hit. Right now, we'll see what happens. Timeline is questionable for their game. So he suffered an elbow injury. He did come back in on that last drive, basically to hand the ball off so they could win the game, and that's what ended up happening. Georgia once again beats Texas, and Quinn Ewers, did not look great in this game. I mean, both quarterbacks really didn't look great in this game, anyways. Because you had Gunnar Stockton come in for Carson Beck. He went 12 of 16 for 71 yards. He had a pick in this game. Carson Beck only went 17 of 13 for 56 yards. Quinn Ewers, I mean, he had 358 yards passing, but he had 2 interceptions in this game. Arch Manning actually came in and ran the ball. But a couple of big days out of their receivers. Matthew Golden had 162 yards receiving. You also had DeAndre Moore Jr. He had 114 yards receiving and a touchdown. But yeah, this game actually ended up going into overtime. And Texas kicked a field goal to put themselves up 19-16, but then Georgia ended up winning on a touchdown. A Trevor Etienne rushing touchdown. So that gave them the win. And Texas goes 0-2 against Georgia this season. But they're both still in the playoffs. And then you had a couple of very entertaining games going on at the same time. You had Penn State and Oregon, and then Clemson and SMU. And SMU was trailing for most of the game. They did not get off to a good start. You had a fumble to start the game. Clemson turned that into a touchdown. Then they punted. Clemson went up 14-0. Then SMU did respond, scored a touchdown to make it 14-7. But then Clemson answered with another touchdown. And then another interception, but Clemson missed a field goal. Then they missed a field goal to start off the second quarter. It was 24-7 at the half. But then, SMU started to mount the comeback. It was 31-14 at one point. But then SMU ended up scoring a touchdown and a field goal in the fourth quarter. They ended up tying the game 31-31. But then Clemson got into field goal range, and they kicked a 56-yard field goal to win the game and to win the ACC championship game. And then with the Big Ten championship, of course, Oregon, a lot of these teams, changed conferences. Oregon's now in the Big Ten. They ended up winning the Big Ten championship game 45-37 over Penn State. They were up 14-3, and then they were up 21-10 at one point. But Penn State kind of hung around. Then it was 28-10 at one point. But Penn State got it down to a 4-point game. But Oregon's offense is just so elite. They've been the best team in college football all year, and they proved that once again in this game to improve to 13-0 on the season. But both teams are going to make the. Penn State's still making the playoffs, of course. But yeah, Oregon was just too good in this game. So they win the Big Ten championship game in their first year in this conference. So now looking at the playoff bracket. So we got Clemson and Texas, and that game is going to be on December 21st. You got Tennessee and Ohio State. Many people think this is going to be a good game. SMU and Penn State. And then you have Indiana and Notre Dame, which will be interesting. I'm happy that the Hoosiers made it, because I thought, again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a college football expert, but I thought that, they would be left out. But that ended up not being the case. They're in, and they deserve to be in, because I just thought it was going to be another Florida State scenario, which didn't happen. But those are your matchups in the first round. So Oregon's got the number 1 seed. Then you have Georgia has the 2, Boise State the 3, and then Arizona State has the 4. So Texas is 5, Penn State is 6, Notre Dame is 7, Ohio State is 8, Tennessee is 9, Indiana's 10, SMU's 11, and then Clemson is 12. And those games will be broadcasted on TNT and ABC. And yeah, those games. So Indiana and Notre Dame will be played on December 20th. And then the other 3 first-round matchups, they will be played on the 21st. So the winner of Penn State, SMU will take on Boise State. The winner of Indiana, Notre Dame will take on Georgia. Tennessee and Ohio State, whoever wins that game is going to take on Oregon. So Oregon's probably, whoever wins that game, that's they could have their hands full. And they played that great game against Ohio State earlier this year. I watched a little bit of that when Will Howard, tried to, do what Dak did in the playoff game against the 49ers, where they tried to get some extra yards, but they didn't have enough time left to, clock it and kick a field goal. And they ended up losing to Oregon. And then the winner of Clemson, Texas will take on Arizona State. So it'll be interesting to see how Arizona State handles the winner of that game. But it should be fun, like I said. It's different, and who knows? They could even expand it to more teams in the future. But it is definitely something that I am looking forward to see how it all plays out. And just I think it's nice because you get to see other teams have the spotlight. And, it's funny how Alabama and Michigan will be playing in another bowl game, a separate game from the playoffs. I think a lot of people were happy that Alabama didn't make it. A lot of people didn't think Alabama deserved to make it. And then you also have Michigan, who was the national champion last year, and they're not even going to be in it. But they did lose a lot of people, and that's why they took a step back. But I'm very interested to see how it all goes. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the bracket, about the teams that are in it. Again, we'll get to see some teams that you wouldn't see in the college football playoff. Get a chance to show off and see what they're made of. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. We don't have anything this week. Everything's the following week. But I am curious to see how it all plays out. It's definitely going to be good. There might be some mismatches. There might be some blowouts. But I mean, that is kind of expected. So we'll see. But before we go to break, though, I just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you have any thought or comment you want to see me acknowledge throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their win over the Cleveland Browns to improve to 10-3 on the season. We'll get into that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Steelers and their win over the Browns. And there was no snow for this game. It was actually a sunny day. And, before the game, George Pickens got ruled out I believe it was a hamstring injury. So I thought the Steelers were going to struggle a little bit. I keep thinking that the Steelers offense is going to have a dud of a game these last couple weeks, but they don't. They've been playing well. Their offense has really been playing well, and that is a credit to Russell Wilson, because myself and many others just didn't think Russell Wilson was going to play well with the Steelers. Now, I thought he would be okay. I think he's definitely been better than okay. I'm not going to say he's been elite, but he has really played well, and he has surprised me. But you know what? He's got a team that believes in him. This is a good spot for him. And, the Steelers with their defense, and Chris Boswell is having an unbelievable season, and they have a good running game. Both running backs are healthy. This is a dangerous team. This team could beat anybody. And, I hope this is the year that, they could take that next step, win a playoff game, maybe go deep into the playoffs, because you know what? They can beat everybody or anybody. They can also lose to anybody, but I don't know. You know what? They're playing well. Now, against the Browns, Jameis had his typical Jameis game where he made some plays. He had that nice touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy early on in the game, but then, he throws an interception on a screen pass, and then he throws another interception where he just overthrows the receiver. That's what Jameis does. But you know what? Right now, he gives the Browns the best chance to win. And there was some controversy that maybe, he might not start, because it didn't seem like Kevin Stefanski was committing to him after the game against the Steelers. But he is going to start against the Chiefs. And it seems like he's going to just be the starter for the rest of the year, which I think that's how it should be. The Browns, they got nothing to play for. Their season's over. Just let him finish out the season, and then then you got some decisions you got to make on what you're going to do next year, because, you're still stuck with the Deshaun Watson contract. And it's just been a disappointing year for the Browns. It really has. And Nick Chubb had another quiet game. He really didn't do much. He did have one decent run at one point. But, again, it's kind of been more of the same. He really has not been a factor in this Browns offense since coming back. And I guess, it does make sense. He's coming off of a significant knee injury. So they don't want to drive him into the ground. And yeah, he had a 19-yard run in this game, but other than that, it's been a struggle for him. But you know what? Jerry Jeudy looks good. That trade with the Broncos actually looks good right now, because he's been solid for them this year. He's going to finish with over 1,000 yards on the season. Has 4 touchdowns on the year. So, you got a player with him. And David Njoku, he's been good with Jameis this year. You hope that with better quarterback play, he can have a big year next year as well. He's been a good player for them. Elijah Moore's been okay at times this year. So, what the Browns got things that they could build on. Of course, you still got, that defense as well with Myles Garrett and also Denzel Ward. They got some good players over there. It's just been a disappointing year for them. It really has. But going back to the Steelers, though, listen, Russell Wilson right now, 12 touchdowns to 3 picks since he's taken over as the starting quarterback. I mean, Nate Burleson said it. He's got his swag back. And looks like he does. I mean, he didn't throw for a ton of yards in this game. Didn't really have to. I mean, the Steelers were in control for pretty much the whole game. At one point, you thought maybe the Browns were going to climb back into it, because Cordero Patterson had a fumble late in the game, but the Browns didn't do anything with the ball. But the Steelers, they were in control. You had Van Jefferson score a touchdown in this game. Pat Freiermuth, he's been playing well. He's been getting the ball more these last few weeks. He has 2 touchdowns in 2 straight games, because he was quiet for a while. But now him and Russell Wilson seem to start getting on the same page. So that's a big target that you want to get going in this offense. Mike Williams had a nice catch down the sidelines. Scotty Miller had a few catches in this game for 38 yards. Like I said, Van Jefferson had a touchdown. Steelers defense had 3 sacks on the day. A couple of interceptions, like I said, one by James Pierre, and the other by defensive lineman Keanu Benton. So, yeah, and Chris Boswell, 3 for 3 on extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals. He has been unbelievable this year. And, the Bills lost. Steelers right now are tied for that number 2 seed. I don't know if they're going to get it, but right now, you're 2 games up on the Ravens, and you're tied with the Bills for the number 2 seed. So right now, playoffs started today. The Steelers would be hosting a playoff game. And look, I like their chances right now to win the division, at least be able to host a playoff game, and maybe you win that playoff game. Now, the Steelers would be going up against 3 teams that they've already played this year, and they've beaten all of them. They beat the Ravens, they beat the Chargers, and they beat the Broncos. Now, the Broncos have been playing better. The Chargers are a little banged up. Once they get some of their guys back, and, Justin Herbert's not going to be, well, Herbert got banged up on Sunday, and he got banged up in the game against the Steelers earlier this year. But you would deal with them a second time, and then you're going to deal with the Ravens possibly for a third time. So those are 3 tough games. Those are 3 tough opponents, I should say, if that's what ends up happening. But like I said, I think the Steelers could beat anybody. If the defense plays well and Russell Wilson makes plays and, you get George Pickens back, of course, and, you rely on the running game as well. The Steelers can play any game to how they want. Because I still think, though, if you got to get into a shootout, like if they have to go to Buffalo at some point in the playoffs, or, if they have to go to Kansas. Well, Kansas City's a little different because their offense has been struggling. But again, it's the playoffs. Kansas City's a different team in the playoffs. If they have to get into a shootout, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up. Now, they got into a shootout with the Bengals, but the Bengals don't have a good defense. What happens now if you go to Buffalo? Well, their defense just got shredded by the Rams. And you got to keep pace with Josh Allen in that stadium. It's going to be tough. That's why I think it's very important for a lot of these teams that they get home playoff games. And, the Chiefs are still somewhat in striking distance here for that number 1 seed. I mean, the Steelers play them one more time. Well, the Steelers play them, I shouldn't say one more time, but they do play them before the season ends. They play them towards the end of the month here. We'll see how that game goes. Steelers got tough games, though. They got the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Chiefs the next 3 weeks. And then you got the Bengals to finish off the year. And who knows what the Bengals will be playing for. Maybe they're still, alive for a playoff spot. But they finished with more wins than I thought they were going to. I said they were going to finish with 9 wins. Again, it's kind of similar to the Vikings, where I didn't know how the quarterback play was going to be. Because I knew, like the Vikings, now I think the Vikings roster might be, I guess when it comes to the skill position players on offense, I'd probably, I would say the Vikings are better in that department. But both teams have good rosters. And I think it really just all comes down to the quarterback play. And the quarterback play for both teams, now Sam Darnold has been better than Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but still, the quarterback play for both teams has really made a difference. And that's why they're in the positions that they're in right now. Now, for the Vikings, they're playing in the NFC North, so they're a wild card team right now. But for the Steelers, they've played so well that they are the number 1 team in their division. And they are 2 games up on the Ravens, who I said was going to win the division going into the season. Quarterback play has made the difference for these teams. And, we'll see what happens when they make the playoffs. But, give the Steelers credit. Russell Wilson, like I said earlier, he has surprised me as well as other people as to how well he has played. And Mike Tomlin, again, I've brought this up a million times now. A lot of people questioned the switch when they went to Russell Wilson. And they told Justin Fields to take a seat. Look at how that's panned out. Russell Wilson, though, he's a better passer than Justin Fields. Now, when it comes to running the football, you would probably lean towards Justin Fields. But to play the quarterback position, you got to be able to be a good thrower of the football. And, Russell Wilson still has the arm talent. It doesn't really extend the plays, like he used to. You don't see a lot of those, like that play against the Cardinals many years ago. The NFC Championship game against the Niners or against the Packers, extending the play. You're not going to see that version of Russell Wilson. But this version of Russell Wilson that we got right now, he's playing the quarterback position well. And the Steelers right now, they do have a complete team that is going to be very dangerous in the playoffs. But like I said, they could beat anybody, but they could also lose to anybody. If the offense has an off game, unless TJ Watt takes over the game and the defense gets some turnovers, it's going to be tough. And we saw that, against the Browns a couple weeks ago where the offense just got off to a slow start. But then they woke up in the second half when the weather got bad. But it was kind of too little too late. I mean, they had an opportunity to win the game, and there were some questionable coaching decisions at the end. But, had they put together a full game there, they'd be 11-2. I still don't know how they lost to the Cowboys. If you look at all their losses, their 3 losses. They lost to the Colts by 3. They lost to the Cowboys, I think, by 3. And then they lost to the Browns by a touchdown. Or by 5 points, whatever it was. All their losses have been one-score games. So this team does not get blown out. Now, they play the Eagles this week. And we're going to talk about the Eagles in the next segment. I give them a good chance to win that game. I really do. Because they have a really good... Because, the Eagles have a good defense, but the Steelers have a good defense. And, for the Eagles, we'll talk about them. Passing game has a little bit of issues. And if the Steelers can slow down Saquon Barkley and Russell Wilson and that offense can move the ball a little bit, I like the Steelers' chances to win that game. I do. So we'll talk about that, though, later this week, because that's going to be one of the games that I preview, because that is a big matchup this week. But we will talk about the Eagles in the next segment. But let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Again, the Steelers 10-3. Didn't think they'd be 10-3 at this point. I had them finishing with 9 wins on the year. So give them credit. Mike Tomlin and that team are looking good right now. 2 games up on the Ravens in the AFC North. So we are going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Eagles-Panthers game and how that, ended up being a close game. We'll talk about that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Eagles-Panthers game from Sunday. This ended up being a close game. Now, I kind of thought this was going to be the week where the Panthers were going to get blown out. And they've been playing well as of late, and they continue to play well in this game. Bryce Young did turn the ball over, but, the Eagles have a very good defense. But you know what? Even with this loss, this was a moral victory for the Panthers because it looks like Bryce Young has found something. And if that's the case, Panthers fans got to be excited. If they can continue to build up this team and he continues to play like this, I think, they're heading in the right direction. I mean, he did have under 200 yards passing looking at the stats here, but again, the Panthers still had an opportunity to maybe win this game. And we got to go all the way down to the very end. And it looked like Xavier Legette caught a pass that would have given the Panthers, well, would have tied the game. And it ended up being ruled incomplete. And then they ultimately did not score, and the Eagles ended up getting the win. But to kind of see how the game unfolded, there were punts to start off this game. Panthers actually went up 3-0. Adam Thielen had a good game. Started off that drive with a 24-yard reception. They eventually kicked a field goal to make it 3-0. Then the Eagles went down the field to make it 7-3. Tush push on 3rd and goal to make it 7-3, like I said. Then the Panthers answered, put together a nice drive. They went 14 plays, 69 yards. Almost 8 minutes of time of possession. And that led to a Bryce Young to Tommy Tremble touchdown on 4th and goal. So, yeah. 10-7 Panthers. Then Bryce Young threw a pick. That led to an Eagles touchdown. Jalen Hurts connected with Devontae Smith. Good to see him back. So that made it 14-10. Then in the second half, Eagles missed a field goal. Jake Elliott missed a 52-yard field goal. And then the Panthers answered with a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard from 1 yard out. He had a big game. 26 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. Then the Eagles responded. They scored another touchdown. And they went for 2 and got it. Jalen Hurts connected with the other tight end, Calcaterra, because there was no Dallas Goedert. I believe he got placed on injured reserve, so they lose him for a bit. That's a loss they're going to feel, though, because Dallas Goedert's a good player. And then Saquon Barkley scored to get the 2-point conversion. So that made it 22-16. And like I said, Panthers, they turned it over on downs. Well, they turned it over on downs once. They went for it on 4th and 2 from the Eagles' 27. And then later, like I said, thought Legette, caught the pass, but that ended up being incomplete. And then the Panthers turned it over on downs. They ended up losing. So, yeah, Bryce Young went 19-34 for 191 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Chuba Hubbard, 26 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. Adam Thielen, 9 receptions for 102 yards. He's been good these last 2 weeks. He had 8 receptions for 99 yards last week and a touchdown. This week he had over 100 yards. So, and it's good to have a veteran like him there for Bryce Young. And that was how it was last year. Adam Thielen, spoke out a lot and defended Bryce Young. And, still to have him there, that's good that, that he's back and that he's healthy. Panthers defense had 4 sacks on the day of Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, only 108 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Saquon Barkley, 20 carries for 124 yards. He broke LaShawn McCoy's rushing record for the Eagles. Barkley now has 1,623 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns on the season. Jalen Hurts had 59 yards on the ground, a touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell had 26 yards on the ground. The Eagles as a team ran the ball for 209 yards. A.J. Brown, only 4 receptions for 43 yards. Devontae Smith had 4 for 37 and a touchdown. And then Grant Calcaterra had 3 for 16 and a touchdown. Eagles defense, only 1 sack of Bryce Young. Jake Elliott did miss a field goal. But, a little bit of drama going on with the Eagles between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's not happy that he's not getting the ball. And Brandon Graham spoke about, kind of what's going on between the two teams. Brandon Graham recently said, "I know 1 is trying and 11 could be better with how he responds to things. They were friends," but he said, read the whole statement here. "They were friends, but things have changed." So that's interesting comment there. And now he supposedly now walked back his comments. He said, "I made a mistake on commenting on what's going on between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown." But yeah, A.J. Brown's not happy about not getting the ball. And yeah, I mean, look, he only had 4 receptions in this game. Jalen Hurts only passed the ball for 108 yards, like I said. But that's what kind of worries me about the Eagles is Jalen Hurts and this passing game has to be better. Like Saquon Barkley, you got him back there, and I think Saquon Barkley has made a huge difference. I keep saying that. The defense also has been playing really well, but that third component, the passing game, to go along with the running game and the defense, that has to be better. It has to be better. Because if if we get to see the matchup that we all want to see, which is the Eagles and the Lions in the NFC Championship game, although if you're a Giant fan like me, maybe you necessarily don't want that. You want to see the Eagles get knocked out. But if you want to see the best of the best, right now, those are the two best teams in the NFC. If it's the Lions and the Eagles passing game has to be better. Jalen Hurts has to be better. You're not going to win a playoff game by throwing for 108 yards. Now, I mean, it helps if you have a really good running game. Like if Saquon Barkley, runs the ball for 200 yards. I mean, the Eagles had 209 rushing yards as a team. All right. But they got to be able to have a good passing game. And you have the wide receivers to do it. You got Devontae Smith back to go along with A.J. Brown. This passing game has to be better. A.J. Brown last week had 5 receptions for 66 yards. The week before that, he had 6 for 109 and a touchdown. He cares about getting his numbers. And I understand that. You want to contribute. But, hey, listen, the Eagles are getting wins. They're 11-2 right now. They are currently the number 2 seed in the conference. It's not like, they're losing games and A.J. Brown's not getting the ball. They're still winning games. And they still have a chance to catch the Lions and maybe get that number 1 seed. The division is pretty much theirs. I don't see Washington catching them. I mean, the Eagles would have to have a collapse like last year, but I just don't see that happening, especially when you have the Cowboys and the Giants at home to finish off the year. Those are 2 wins right there. I mean, 3 of your next 4 games are coming at home. You got the Steelers coming up, but I think, that's going to be a close game. And then you got the Commanders on the road. Commanders are coming off of a bye, and, Jane Daniels, with that rest because, he's a little banged up. And we saw how they looked against the Titans. They looked more like the Washington Commanders offense that we saw, throughout the whole season. And that's a road game. So that could be tough. But either way, you got the Cowboys and the Giants to finish off the year at home. They should win those 2 games. And, maybe they go 4-0 these last 4 games. Maybe they go 4-0 and they finish the year 15-2. But you got to be happy about that at least. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't want to blow that situation out of proportion. Like I said, Brandon Graham did walk back the comments and apologize. But, we'll keep an eye on that. You don't want that to ruin, the good thing that the Eagles have going on right now. They're 11-2, and they're a very dangerous team. But they can also be a team that's beatable because, of this passing game. If, Saquon Barkley gets shut down, and the defense is not playing well, you got to be able to, keep up with some of these teams. It's kind of like it's kind of the same thing with the Steelers too. They both have good defenses, and I mean, Eagles' running game is better, but if you got to get into a shootout with the team, is your passing game going to be able to keep up with that? And you would think with A.J. Brown and with Devontae Smith that would be the case. But, ultimately it could be up to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has to be better. And, maybe it's not just him. Maybe it's the play calling. I've kind of thought about it, though. If Saquon Barkley is running the ball effectively, just continue to run the ball with him. Here against the Panthers, it wasn't that kind of game. It was a close game, so it's not like you had to throw for a ton of yards to keep pace. But what's going to happen when you have that kind of game? Is Jalen Hurts going to be able to step up? That's something that remains to be seen. That's the thing that I would be worried about with the Eagles is the passing game. just because, you can't have a quarterback throwing for 180 yards. If you're playing against the Lions. If you're playing against, the Packers and the Eagles got into a shootout early on this year. Well, the first game of the year. So, we'll see what happens. But that's the one thing that I'd be worried about. Like I said, is just the passing game. But they got the talent to do it. So, but A.J. Brown not happy that he's not getting the ball. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But that's pretty much it when talking about the Eagles-Panthers game. Let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Again, you know what? The Panthers, as a team, they showed you something that, they're not a pushover. Even against, the Eagles, who are one of the best teams in the NFC, one of the best teams in the NFL, they kept it close. And they had an opportunity to win the game. So that at least shows you something. And, whoever they play the rest of the year, that team's going to have their hands full. They do play the Bucs. They do play the Falcons again. They play the Cowboys this week, actually. So, Panthers, I think will get another win this year. And they'll get double the amount of wins that I thought they were going to get. Because I think, what did I only have them at? 2? So, but yeah, the Eagles, they win a close one. They're 11-2 on the year. And like I said, the NFC East is pretty much theirs. So, but there are some concerns that I have. But I said this even before this game. So, but we are going to take now our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about the 49ers and their win over the Bears, 38-13, getting back on track. We'll also talk about it from the Bears' perspective as well, because, yeah, that defense did not look good in the post-Matt Eberflus era. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the 49ers and their win over the Bears. We do have a couple of comments in the chat from Anthony Manzano. He says, first question is, are there any defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators in college or not that you see becoming head coaches in the NFL but doing the same job in the NFL? That, not entirely sure. He also said, so they don't have to deal with recruiting, because I'm hearing from my side as a Hurricanes fan that both Lance Guidry and Shannon Dawson are looking to leave, possibly for the NFL. I think that might go for more than just them too, because of what's going on there. That's just becoming too much. But that I'll have to look more into. Because really, for me, I'm just focusing on, offensive coordinators in the NFL and, some guys that were out of coaching this year, like Mike Vrabel. Well, Mike Vrabel's on coaching staff with is on the Browns coaching staff, but him, Belichick, even Pete Carroll maybe, they might want to get back into the ring and coach a team next year. So that's what I'm focused on. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. But anyways, I wanted to get into talking about the 49ers and their win over the Bears. So the 49ers looked like the 49ers. Now, it was coming, it was going up against a team in the Bears that fired their head coach, and that really showed. I think people thought, well, the Bears fired Matt Eberflus. Now, it's going to be one of those things where the team plays really good and maybe wins the game. But that did not happen. The 49ers dominated this game from start to finish. The Bears got shut out 24-0 in the first half. They did look better in the second half. But that's kind of been the Bears as of late. Some games they don't look good in the first half, and then in the second half they look better. But Caleb Williams got knocked around in this game by the Niners defense. They did not have Nick Bosa in this game, of course. 7 sacks in this game by the 49ers defense. The Bears, first they need to get the right head coach in place for next year. Second of all, they need to improve this offensive line because Caleb Williams is getting hit way too much. He's getting hit way too much. And you do not want him getting hurt because we saw what happened with Andrew Luck when the injuries started to stack up. Now, this is only Caleb Williams' first year in the NFL, but you don't. And it was the same thing with Joe Burrow when he first came into the league. He was taking too many hits, and he got hurt because of it. You don't want that happening to Caleb Williams, so they need to improve that offensive line. But like I said, the 49ers, they looked more like the 49ers. Brock Purdy had a great performance, nice bounce-back game, 20-25 for 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Isaac Guerendo, the 49ers just seem to produce running backs. 15 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Taylor also had a touchdown. Guerendo actually got hurt in this game, so we'll keep an eye on his status going forward because they do have a quick turnaround. They do play on Thursday against the Rams, which is a big game. George Kittle, bounce-back game for him, 6 receptions for 151 yards. Juwan Jennings, 7 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Guerendo also had 50 yards receiving. Deebo Samuel, a quiet day, 2 receptions for 22 yards. Also had 13 rushing yards as well. But yeah, you had 3 sacks by Gross Matos. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. Leonard Floyd had a couple of sacks. Malik Collins had a sack in this game. The Niners defense was all over the Bears. And then for Caleb Williams, he had 2 touchdowns in this game, only threw for 134 yards. Bears really didn't run the ball. They only had 68 yards on the ground. DJ Moore, 6 receptions for 49 yards. Rome Odunze had 4 for 42 and 2 touchdowns. So a nice game for him. Caleb Williams did lose a fumble in this game. Bears defense only 1 sack of Brock Purdy, and they dropped to 4-9 on the season. And the 49ers get to 6-7. And the Bears now have lost. They haven't won a game since October 13th. So in nearly 2 months, they haven't won a game. I don't know if they're going to win another game. I don't know. They could, but at one point they were 4-2. But since then, they have now lost 7 in a row. 7 straight games they have lost. It's been a tough stretch for them. They were competitive against their 3 division rivals, but against the Niners, they just had no chance. And the Niners were, a little ticked off with how these last couple weeks have gone, on the road against the Packers and against the Bills, having 30-plus points dropped on you the last 2 weeks. And this was a get-right game for them. And I did go from taking the Bears to the Niners because I was like, the Niners got to bounce back at some point. And they did. And now you got a big game on Thursday with the Rams. That's a big game for both teams. You got the Seahawks, who are in first place right now. Both teams are trying to keep pace with them. The Niners are not done yet. But, the Rams are in a better position right now than the Niners are. So, you got to hope that the Seahawks slip up. They do play the Packers on Sunday Night Football. So, the Packers are coming off of a loss, so maybe, even if whoever loses on Thursday, if the Seahawks lose, then, you don't lose ground on them. But the Niners, they got to hope that they get some of their guys back on. If they can get Nick Bosa back, that would be huge. And we'll see what happens with Guerendo. But, it's amazing, though, how they just continue to produce running backs. I mean, obviously Christian McCaffrey came over via trade, but you had Jordan Mason, who was doing well. You had Guerendo. I mean, you even go back to when they made it to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, you signed Raheem Mostert, and he came out of nowhere. It's just, even Elijah Mitchell, you go back to him, before all the injuries. He was good for them a few years ago. It just seems like they always have a good running back. So, hopefully Garendo is healthy for the game on Thursday. But, at least for 1 week, the Niners looked like the Niners again. I also wanted to acknowledge a couple of comments by Anthony in the chat. He said, Bill Belichick is out. He just recently signed a massive contract with North Carolina to be their head coach. Is that actually confirmed? I didn't hear. Unless that happened while I was doing the show. I saw that he was interested in the job. Yeah, I don't see anything. I don't see anything about that. It says, I see an article from Sports Illustrated that says why Belichick coaching North Carolina makes sense. That hasn't happened yet. So we will see. But I don't think anything has. Actually, he said the same thing. CNN has an article from almost a day ago. Bill Belichick on UNC coaching job. We'll see. We will see. Also, he said, I was watching a segment with Redrafted the Draft where the Bears drafted their wide receiver in the top 3. Rich Eisen had them drafting Joe Alt. Yeah, I mean, they probably could have maybe used him if they would have, the Chargers took him. If they traded up and took him instead of a Dunze. But that's what they're going to have to do. I think going into this draft, the Bears have to draft an offensive lineman. I think that's what they got to do. You got to improve this offensive line next year. You got to protect your own quarterback. And then he also said, Anthony in the chat, who is the best overall tight end in the league? Not just purely receiver, purely a blocker, one that's a hybrid. I like Kelsey, but he doesn't really block. Kelsey does block. I guess as the better overall tight end that could do everything is probably Kittle. Because, when the 49ers love to run the football, he's blocking. Yeah, I would probably say Kittle as of right now, but overall, career-wise, it's definitely been Kelsey. So, but both are very good tight ends. Brock Bowers, though, he's going to be the number 1 tight end when Kelsey and Kittle hang it up. He looks like he's going to be a really good player for the Raiders. So at least the Raiders have him. But, back to this game, though. The Bears... Yeah, I saw a TikTok talking about how Matt Eberflus was not the problem. I think it's kind of similar to Robert Saleh with the Jets. Maybe defensively, because the Bears' defense, is pretty good. But, Matt Eberflus was a problem. Was he the whole problem? No, but he was definitely a big problem. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't think... I thought the Bears would finish with a decent record. They got 4 wins right now. It's just he was one of the reasons why I didn't think they were going to do that good. And the defense just got absolutely shredded by the Niners. And it doesn't really surprise me because, look, the Niners have that pedigree. They're a team that's got their backs against the wall right now. They're ticked off about what happened these last 2 weeks. This was a get-right game for them, and they delivered. And they're fighting for their lives right now. They are fighting for their playoff lives. And even without Christian McCaffrey, without Jordan Mason, without Brandon Ayuk, without Nick Bosa, they still have a chance to try to get into the dance. And it's going to be very tough. They got a tough game against the Rams. Look what the Rams just did to the Bills. And, the Rams already beat the Niners. Now, the Niners, they didn't have George Kittle. They didn't have Deebo Samuel in that game. They're going to have them for this game. It's gonna be a fun game. It's really gonna be fun to watch that. Looking forward to it. But at least for this week, the Niners were able to get back on track. Anthony also in the chat said, when Christian McCaffrey decides to retire, who do you think is going to be the running back that replaces him as the best overall running back in the league where he can block, catch, and run? Well, it could be a running back that hasn't gotten drafted yet. Maybe we'll see how the running backs look that come out of this draft class. I think behind McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. You know, you got Saquon Barkley. Also, people were complimenting Bijan Robinson on, blocking and pass protection as well on Sunday against the Vikings. You could also look at Bijan. Maybe Bijan becomes the number one guy. I mean, I think right now it's Saquon and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry obviously is not a receiving back, but, I mean, Derrick Henry's had an unbelievable season as well. I think in terms of long-term, because, Bijan, this is his second season. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's him. But I think, you still got Saquon and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry might retire, I don't know when Derrick Henry's planning on retiring. Definitely not anytime soon. But we'll see. I look at Bijan. Bijan I don't think is a bad pick long term. But we'll see how many years Saquon and Derrick Henry have left. Because in their situations, they definitely have added more years to their career. Derrick Henry is in his 30s. Saquon is 27. So Anthony also says the issue with both Ezekiel and Saquon is, can you trust them to stay healthy? Well, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is not a top running back anymore. So if you mean Derrick Henry, yeah. But they've both stayed healthy this year. And then he said, when I look at Robinson, I don't see McCaffrey. He reminds me a little bit of Deuce McAllister and Ricky Williams. Interesting. All right, well, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'll have my power rankings for tomorrow. So make sure to tune in for that. And make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of